Oh, greetings. Welcome back to Growing Up with Godzilla. My name is Donny Winter, and this is my show where I have conversations with Godzilla fans about how they've grown with the character and franchise over time. This episode is a continuation of my conversation with the ever so iconic and delightful Yoko Higuchi, so I hope that you enjoy the rest of this conversation. Let's talk about the films. Let's
Yeah,
talk about the
please.
Godzilla films. So, over the years, which Godzilla films have transformed into your favorites and
Mhm.
why?
Yeah, I recently I ranked all the Godzilla films on Letterboxd recently, just as an experiment. I was like, huh, how
How
do
am
I
I
rank
feeling
these?
right now?
How am I feeling right now? And like I wrote in the description like this list can change tomorrow, 2 years from now, a decade from now. So this is just I'm gonna take a look at this. I'm just gonna rattle off my what's in my 10.
That's going to be amazing.
I
Please do
think that would
it.
just be easier. So at 10, it's Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019. That had a very special place in my heart. Seeing, I think I never thought I'd see the classic three Toho kaiju joining Godzilla in a Hollywood movie. I was kind of
Uh,
blown away by that.
Not to
Yeah,
mention the musical score,
Bear McCreary is a
oh
king.
my
Just he
god.
really went off with
Bear
that
McCreary,
score.
we love you
We love you, Bear
forever.
McCreary. Work with me.
Yes, do it.
Yeah. Number 9, Godzilla versus Biollante, which is a favorite of yours.
Love it.
Destroy All Monsters is at number 8, which I adore that movie. 7 is my first one, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. 6 is Mothra versus Godzilla, 64. 5 is Destroya.
Oh,
Yeah, that one.
I'm just emotionally reacting to all of your listing. Sorry.
And Destroya means a lot to me specifically because I was born on that year in '95,
Hmm.
so I feel a very strong connection to that one in particular.
Hmm.
4 is GMK because it's
Oh,
GMK. It's such a banger all the way
iconic.
through. Yeah,
I'm
iconic.
suspicious of anybody who says that they hate GMK.
That would be a little suspicious.
I'm sure
uh,
somebody will comment and eviscerate me for saying that. But
right,
you know what?
right.
I like a good debate. So,
Yeah. 3 is -1.
mm.
2 is Shin, and then number 1 is, of course, the 54 original. I think it kind of remains the thing to beat and is unbeatable. So, yeah,
It's an
that's
iconic
my 10
list.
for now.
That's a great list of 10.
Thank you.
And like so many of my favorites are in that list, which makes me very happy. I'm trying to think of what my top. I don't know if I can do a 10 right now, but my
Well,
top
I know
five
you love
right
the
now.
duology. That's like your like.
I do. So Tokyo SOS, I think, is still probably it's probably second to
Mhm,
minus one. Like so minus one would be number one for me.
mhm.
I'm going in the opposite direction.
Okay.
Minus one, number one. Tokyo SOS number two. I would say that number three for me would be Godzilla versus Biollante, though sometimes it shifts dramatically to number one.
Mhm.
Chaos here. Was that number three or four? That was three.
That was 3, I think.
See, counting was never my strong suit. Then I would say that I do hold a very special place in my heart for the 90s Godzilla versus Mothra because of
Mhm.
the fan service that that film performs.
Yeah.
And then I would say number five would be Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster.
Nice.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, good list. Good list.
Thank
I'm
you.
upset that I missed Tokyo SOS in theaters when it came out. Was it last year that it came out in
I
theaters?
missed it too. I'm so mad. I
I
am
was
so mad.
I was mad. I was like, "Oh, come on, are you serious?" But yeah,
Although
had
I
to miss.
heard that not many people had like a good viewing experience due to
Oh, really? Oh, that sucks.
like streaming issues or something. I don't know. At least maybe that was just like very specific to like particular areas. I'm not
Mhm,
sure. But now like if we move on from the films and focus a little bit more on like the kaiju or human characters,
mhm.
like what ones have you been like drawn to over those years? And if so, why have you been drawn to
Mhm.
them?
I think for me the very easy answer is this guy.
Yeah.
I think there was a reason why I think as a child I stared at this and didn't move. I really, really love King Ghidorah. I think he is my favorite monster outside of Godzilla. Like adore King Ghidorah so much. I love that he's like the rival of like the Joker to Batman, sort of, for
Hmm.
Godzilla. I love that it's got three heads but no arms for some reason. Like it's such a strange, like, I think for us, like, it's such an iconic design, but if you look at it, it's very strange looking that he's got three heads, two wings, no arms, and two tails, and but two legs. It's like it's such a strange creature. And I really just whenever King Ghidorah pops up, and I think in my top 10 he pops up like 4 or 5 times. So clearly I do have a love for the character, because yeah, I think I just have to give it to King Ghidorah, and I think that's why I was so kind of blown away by King of the Monsters, because he was so, like, overpowered in that, and
Hmm.
I was having the time of my life in the theater watching him. But
He was terrifying.
so terrifying, and they just made him look so, like, massive for some reason. Like, he always looked big, but like there were so many shots in that movie where he just looked like a behemoth, like an unknowing, like, Lovecraftian sort of
Right.
creature. Yeah, I really, really
Right.
dug that.
I really felt like the MonsterVerse version of King Ghidorah did take a lot of inspiration from Grand King Ghidorah from Mothra 3.
The
Um,
design is
the
close.
design one well, and honestly, in my mind, the only other time I have found King Ghidorah semi-scary was
Mhm.
specifically that film.
Yeah, Mothra 3, I was pretty, when I first saw it, I was like, "What's going on? He's kidnapping kids and putting it in a little, like, weird flesh blob thing. What's going on here?" And I was really freaking out, and then, like, Mothra just gets, like, stomped in the first fight they have, and I was like, "What's going on here? Is he just beating up Mothra, like, this easily? What's going on?" So, as a kid, Mothra 3 was very, like, impactful, and then, like, seeing that design in action was always kind
Oh my
of
goodness.
a blessing, yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like as much flack and people are gonna eye roll because they're like, "There goes Danny again, another Mothra tangent." But no, I feel like Mothra 3 or the Mothra trilogy gets a lot of flack because of the target audience, but, like, some of the battles are just so good.
I'm
Like,
actually on your side. I
I mean, if you weren't, we would have a great discussion regardless,
yeah.
but I'm glad you are. But, like, I will not like, especially the first film, I will never forget that
Oh, yeah.
lengthy battle between Mothra larva, and Death Ghidorah,
Mhm.
who is actually surprisingly my favorite variation of Ghidorah because it's
Really?
just
That's cool.
so
I like that.
like quadrupedal, like
It's weird.
scary,
Yeah.
like
It's like it's
just
all black, and, like, it's got, like, a bits of red and stuff. It's strange. It's cool
right,
design.
right. But he was just like so kind of just unhinged as a
Yeah.
Ghidorah, and I was just like, oh my god, like is
Yeah.
why everything is on fire, exploding, you know. But so okay, so Ghidorah, a King Ghidorah is one of your favorites. So,
Mhm.
how like are there any other kaiju that you really gravitate to, or human characters?
Yeah, so another kaiju that I really like, before getting to the human ones, is I'm a big sucker for Gigan. I really love Gigan, even though he pops up only 3 times in the whole franchise, basically. I love Gigan so much, specifically the, Final Wars Gigan. I
Mm,
really love that design. I think it's so, so cool. Um, and, yeah, he's just kind of a jerk, which is great. Like, he's just so, like, aggressively mean,
mhm.
and, like, cuts Anguirus's face. Like, it's he's such a great, like, angry chicken monster. I love him so much.
Angry space, angry cyborg space chicken.
Exactly, that's yeah, and he has the attitude of an angry cyborg space chicken, so I'm like, "Great, I love this."
I mean,
Guy
if I were one, I would probably be semi-homicidal too. I don't know,
that's right.
honestly.
Yeah, controlled by space cockroaches. You go
Who wouldn't
crazy.
be a little unhinged at that point?
Exactly, exactly. And then for human characters, I really, and this I think this is a cliche, but, it's an easy answer, but, Dr. Serizawa in 54 and, Dr. Yamane in 54, I
Mhm.
think, at least for me, those 2 characters are the ones that, I keep coming back to, and I think can't be topped, despite all of the the fun human characters in the other movies. There's something about the deep sadness in Dr. Serizawa and his
Oh yeah.
quietness and like the tragedy of that character, of course, that really still resonates with me. Like no matter how many times I see it, because I see that first film like at the very least once a year on Godzilla Day, like at the very least. So it could be
Hmm.
like 2 or 3 times a year that I watch it. And every time I see it, like Dr. Yamane and Dr. Serizawa just have this great characterization where Dr. Yamane, as a scientist, cares about not about Godzilla, but about knowing more about the creature and trying to figure out why such a thing exists. And I think that's such an interesting angle that
Hmm.
honestly hasn't been played that much in science fiction, even now. You don't see a lot of
Yeah.
that kind of character. And if you do, it kind of feels like an homage to Dr. Yamane, kind of.
Hmm.
And then there's Dr. Serizawa, who is like basically the Oppenheimer of the movie, who he creates a
Right.
device that's just like a world ender, and then he makes the ultimate sacrifice and kills himself with Godzilla to keep the secret. Uh, I don't think a Godzilla character has been as powerful as Dr. Serizawa in terms of like the timeliness of creating such a character, like right after the atom bombs were dropped on Japan. Like
Right.
it really still resonates and hits you like a sledgehammer. And like as much as I love, for example, like the -1 cast, who are all
Hmm.
incredible. They're all, as everyone has already discussed, the human characters in -1. Like I don't need to say any more to add on to that. They're all, everyone knows they're great. um but there's just something about Dr. Serizawa that just like stabs me with a knife, like really deep into my chest. And yeah, I've never been able to shake those two, Dr. Yamane and Serizawa from the first film.
Yeah, like that. Like I really like that you created that juxtaposition, right? I
Mhm.
think that one thing I really love about that film specifically is that there isn't a very distinct like hero villain. It's all nebulous.
Yeah.
And whereas future Godzilla films like really paint like, oh, this person's clearly a hero, this
Yeah.
person's clearly a villain. Like the first Godzilla film like is just wrought with so much moral ambiguity, and I think that's what
Mhm.
makes it so one, ahead of its time, two,
Yes.
perfect for its time, and
Mhm.
three, just kind of monumental slash iconic.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I love y Miki Sagusa and Akane and,
Oh
all
yeah.
these heroic like, they're all, on the pantheon of, like, my absolute favorites. But there is, as you were saying, there is just something so challenging about Dr. Serizawa and Dr. Yamane that hasn't really been seen before and or seen after since. And
Mhm.
I honestly kind of don't need it to be seen again. I like that those two characters are kind of like an outlier in the franchise. and
Right.
and uh you know uh the first Godzilla isn't a movie that you like root for a character. It kind of is like you are stuck in a situation and
Mhm.
you see how these people have to react to said situation. I think
Yeah.
also Shin Godzilla has a lot of that influence too, where it's not about like a character. Well, it kind of is, but like it's more about the characters reacting to a moment and seeing these people react to it, as opposed to adding more like backstory stuff. Like the only like real, I think, emotional center we have in the first one is that like is the love triangle between those three
Mhm.
characters. And um I think that's all well and good, but like you still don't know anything about the characters in the 54 movie
Right.
outside of that specific backstory, and that Dr. Serizawa was in the war, and that's only mentioned like
Yeah.
briefly.
And the love
Um,
triangle isn't something that's I mean, you're aware of it and you know that it is informing the dynamic, but
mhm,
it's not something that's, like, really like, this whole story is not necessarily hinging
exactly,
on the love
exactly.
triangle, which, again, is a very interesting choice considering so many other films that we've seen, like, where there are
Mhm,
love triangles, like, it's, like, cataclysmic, detrimental to the
right,
entire story, right?
right.
So
Yeah, that's always been an interesting factor, and I think I really like that aspect where it's not like about rooting a character. It's just about observing them.
right.
But I think as the franchise goes on, like, it is nice to root for Shikishima in -1 or
Mm,
Akane in the first Kiryu film, and, you know, Segusa in the Heisei, series. It is nice that we have a central kind of anchor to be like, "I like this person, I want that person to succeed." Like, that's always a good feeling, but
right.
I think that first film just is so subversive in so many ways, and I really value that.
Absolutely. And I want to frame this conversation in the sense as sort of like a resistance to the rhetoric that we see where people are
Mhm.
always like Godzilla movies are just they just have trash human characters because we see that rhetoric a lot. And I'm
I
just
hate
like,
that.
like the characters aren't perfect, but
Mhm.
I do feel like we have a very good spectrum of the films being an examination of human decision making, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Ultimately. So I think I really think that that's a good retort to those people. No, but ultimately, like in the pantheon of let's imagine that there is a Mount Rushmore of
Mhm.
human Godzilla characters. I feel like Sarazawa would definitely be
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
On
No,
that.
hands down agreed. Yeah. And there's and like you were saying, I really hate that notion that people say that the human characters suck in Godzilla movies. I so far in the history of Godzilla films, and I would even argue the only Godzilla film which I don't particularly like, I'm sorry, Roland Emmerich, but the '98 movie, even even that movie has characters that I remember,
Right.
and I would argue that all the Godzilla movies, even the ones that people think are silly, Megalon, have characters that I think are at the very least charming to watch, and I think
Mhm.
that is more than enough depending on the type of movie that you're gonna make. Because I think, people rag on Godzilla, versus Megalon or, All Monsters Attack, and sure, I can get it, it's cheesy and campy, sure, I understand it, but at the same time, I don't think it's correct, in my opinion, to kind of disregard them
Right.
as, like, junk, so to speak. Like, there is a proper story, there are proper character moments, and, like, there are, the characters go from place A to place B by the end of the film. So I think that all the Godzilla movies so far are like properly made movies with a lot of thought
Yeah.
put into them. So yeah, I would just very much disagree with the whole notion that Godzilla characters suck, and -1 for some reason is like the only one with good characters. I'm like, guys, like,
We're
it
just like,
I
please.
please, like, yeah, like, not to take away from the -1 cast, because again, like, I love them so much, but I when the US critics were like, "Oh, this is the first time the human cast was so great," I was like, "Have you seen the rest of these
Well, I
movies?"
mean, case in point, like you know me, I like to argue with people on Twitter, or whatever it's called now. But so like, I remember seeing people being like, "Oh, what makes -1 different from every other Godzilla film is its mental health commentary, like its
Okay. Yeah,
themes," which yes, I do think that it does cover especially PTSD in a very specific way that other
most
films
definitely.
have not. But this is not the first time the Godzilla franchise has incorporated any
Yeah.
sort of storylines regarding mental health, which it's the one reason I love the character Akane so much from the Kyoto duology because she struggles with her mental health, with a sense of belonging, with,
Mhm.
rampant misogyny that she's dealing
Mhm.
with, right?
Mhm.
So, like, I feel like those things are very much present in other
Mhm.
films. I will say that in -1, it's far more centralized.
Yeah.
And I think it's presented in a different way that really builds the pathos of the
Right.
film. Um, but ultimately, I don't think that we should just disregard the rest of the franchise on the
Yeah.
human standpoint. So,
Mhm.
even Godzilla X Kong, like people have been going on and on and on of like the human characters are trash. I'm not saying they're perfect by any stretch of the imagination.
Mhm.
However, I will say, and P.S. if you've not watched the film yet, spoilers. Um, but like the storyline with like Gia and like trying to determine where her sense of belonging leads to, like whether
Mhm.
it's like, with why am I blanking on the doctor's name?
Oh, Dr. Eileen Andrews.
Dr. Eileen Andrews is. So like whether she belongs, with Dr. Eileen Andrews or, with, this long lost, culture of people who were thought to have been gone, right?
Mhm.
Like I thought that was a very complex story like arc
Yes.
for her
Yes.
that was an interesting development to me. Like I thought it was very enduring.
No, full on agree. And then it was really great. The first time I saw it opening night, I was with my friends and two other friends from the Godzilla community and my mom who goes to movies with me all the time. And as the end credits rolled, she turned to me and she went, "This is 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. What are they talking about?" So,
Right?
and she was like wiping tears at the final scene with Gia and Dr. Andrews. Like she was like crying, and I was getting kind of teary eyed too. Like I think it's a very sweet moment, and I think the MonsterVerse, like no matter how silly and kind of over the top they can be sometimes, especially in most two recent Adam Wingard
Mhm.
films, there is a central story about family or coming together, and I think that's more than enough for the kind of movie that it is. Like I disagree that
Right.
everything like I don't want everything to be -1. I don't need to have PTSD trauma in all the Godzilla movies. Like
Right.
yeah, like, I liked that -1 was, like, deadly serious and so endearing, and it makes you, like, ugly cry in the theater, like, that is beautiful, but I don't wanna ugly cry in every single Godzilla movie.
Right.
Like yeah,
Absolutely. Well,
variation's good.
and it's nice to be like we can have like the very, serious socio-political dramatic
Mm,
aspects of -1, but we can also fully enjoy what Godzilla X Kong gives us and like the
exactly.
the unmitigated chaos of
Yeah,
monsters and these humans who are just thrown into these situations, right?
yeah,
So, here is the question of the hour.
okay.
How has Godzilla shaped you into the person you are today?
Just in personal life, I do wonder sometimes, like, like, I am surrounded by this merch, so clearly it has changed my life in some way, but, like, how is the question, right?
Right.
So, I think it really, Godzilla set me on, I think, the path that I'm in because at first, when I was a scientist, Godzilla is first and foremost a science fiction franchise that heavily focuses on science. A lot of the times, there are, especially in the later Heisei Millennium films, there is so much focus on science and trying
Mm,
to make it like it's still implausible, obviously, but they're trying to make it as plausible as it could possibly be. And I
mhm,
remember watching like the Heisei Mechagodzilla movie as a kid. I was blown away, and I thought it was like so plausible that like they had all the schematics for the Heisei Mechagodzilla just like ready to go, and they had all the command centers and stuff. Like it was real. It felt real to me as a kid. So I think that captured my imagination in terms of the science and technology aspect of um, my career path at that time. And then when I transitioned into filmmaking, again, like, these are films. So it gave me a greater appreciation for filmmaking and films in general. So it did shape me into the person I am today in like small ways. But I think I can confidently say without Godzilla, I would not be where I am today.
mm,
Doing film or having a passion for science. I don't think the flames would have been like fanned
mhm.
without um, this guy here. So
Uh, well, that's a convenient transition into talking about collecting. Are you a collector by any chance?
am I? Do you think?
I don't
Do I have
know.
a
You
collection?
tell
Do I?
me.
um, yes. Some might call it a problem, others a hobby. That depends on your personal opinion. Yes, I am a collector. I am slightly ashamed because of the wallet
Oh,
situation that it puts me in. So
well,
obviously,
nobody needs to know that,
no one needs to
right?
know that. It does feel like a compulsion sometimes where I look at something and I'm like, I must have this. I've been collecting ever since my first toy, which was this guy. So
Mm,
ever since this toy, I've just been so for over 25 years, I've been collecting as many toys as I can in my room. If I can turn this computer around and show you, there's like here are kaiju's looking at me currently
Like
behind.
shelving units
Yeah,
of
yeah. There's a shelf here on my desk. There's a shelf here, and there are two rows of shelves here. There's stuff back here, more stuff back there. So they're all looking at me currently. So,
I
yeah.
love that in the back you have like this fancy china cabinet with
Oh yeah.
are there Godzilla figures on that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's.
That is an aesthetic that I dream of. Like that's
Oh, thank
great.
you. Yeah. There's some Shin Kamen Rider toys. There's Shin Gomez, and there's some Evangelion toys. Mecha Godzilla's there. So yeah, there's oh yeah. See, there's too much stuff. So,
Uh,
yeah.
oh, that made my day. No, like my office is similar. Like I have like shelving of like I have a bunch of like Funko Pops and
Mm.
the figures that I refuse to take out of the boxes because my fiance has yelled at me not to take them out of the boxes. Um and of course they're Mothra figures too, so I really want to be able to hold them, but he's like,
Mm.
don't take them out of the boxes.
You're like,
And then like
fine.
for me, like I'm obsessed with like chibi's and plushes. So
Mhm.
and I'm starting to get into the Safubis as well.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that's if I ever get some, financial capability to do this, I'm going to be getting some.
Yeah.
Now, what figure, aside from the first one that you got, are
Mhm.
you most proud of
Honestly,
owning?
yes. And he's sitting right here with me. I'm
Convenient.
really I'm really happy about this Ben Presto Shin Godzilla
Oh,
figure. Because it took a lot of lottery tickets to get this guy. So I am really happy that I got it because, obviously I couldn't just get it from the shelf in a store. So, literally, so I forgot what store it was, but, they had this lottery thing where they gave you, there was like A, B, C, D, and E tickets in a
mhm.
box, and you just put your hand in, and whatever, letter you get like a thing, and this was uh, A, I believe. And I'm in the store with my mother, and she she walked up to the cashier and she was like, "He's going to dig until he gets to A. So just keep ringing the cash register until he gets to A." Uh, so that's how I got this guy. So
I love that your
uh,
mom is just like, he's gonna go for it. Like
he's gonna
just
go
like
for it,
just
and
just do it.
yeah, nothing will stop him at this point. So you better get to work. So
You want a career in filmmaking? Just go for it.
just
Just
go
do
for it.
it.
So yeah, this one is
Oh,
definitely one that I'm very, very, very fond of. Yeah, he just looks
it's
great.
the detail on it is just absolutely stunning.
Yeah, it's such a great figure. It was horrible to get on an airplane. Putting this guy in a suitcase was so challenging because of the
I can
tail.
imagine.
Yeah. So I keep him right here next to me.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I think that there's so much interesting conversation in the fan base about collecting, and I feel
Mhm.
like it's so good to like normalize the fact that people just love these things. Like
Mhm.
it's one very important way of being able to celebrate the characters and franchise that we love is to
Mhm.
just is to have like these figments of it,
Mhm.
right? So, um my final question for you
Yeah.
for today. Do you have any advice for Godzilla fans who may be new to the franchise? And being that you're a filmmaker, I'll add an addendum to that as
Mhm.
well. Do you have any advice for aspiring filmmakers too?
Oh, good question. So for the first one, Um, I would say if you're entering the Godzilla fandom for the first time and you're a newcomer, and maybe you've seen like the Gareth Edwards movie once, and then you're kind of like, I'm curious, or you saw Godzilla X Kong, and you're like, I wonder, what other things this franchise
Mhm.
has. I would say the best thing I can say about the Godzilla franchise, and why it still in my 20 odd years of almost 30 years of loving this thing, it hasn't changed is because there's so much variety in this franchise. There is something literally for anyone. There are very childish movies. There are very serious movies. There are some movies in the middle where they're entertaining but also serious, but also kind of child friendly. So
Mm-hmm.
it really ranges from all different kinds of things. And I think that there is this perception that Godzilla is like for boys, and maybe I don't know if that's true or not, but I think it really does have something for literally anyone of race, gender, age. Like it just it spans so many different things, and I think the best thing about it is that you can't put Godzilla in a box outside of it being a monster thing. That's the only box you can
Mm-hmm.
really put it in. But outside of that, like yes, it's science fiction, but it's like some are science fiction comedy, some are like borderline science fiction horror.
Yeah.
Some are like action movies, some are like the 54 one where it's like a drama with a monster in it. So
Mm-hmm.
uh I think if you're entering into the Godzilla fandom, I think just maybe pick out something that would interest you, just like going on the Wikipedia and seeing all the movies on a list, and then
Yeah.
kind of going like, okay, so maybe if I kind of want to do a serious one, maybe you watch 54, 84, Shin Godzilla -1,
Mm-hmm.
or if you want to see like big action figures hitting each other, watch Megalon, watch Ebirah, like there are so many different things that you can pick from. And that's what I really love about this franchise is like it really has everything you could ever ask for, and also that they're all proper films. They're never lazy. They're never like, I mean, yes, you can call them cash grabs because it's a franchise. Franchises are all cash grabs, but it's not a soulless kind of hollow cash
Mm-hmm.
grab where they're just kind of like, make it. It always has thought put into it, passion put
Mm-hmm.
into it, and dedication put into it, and you can feel it in any film depending on how you view it. And I think no matter if you dislike a movie or like a movie, I think you have to at least admit that the filmmakers behind it weren't like phoning it in. They were really trying to make a movie that was respectful and
Mm-hmm.
had some kind of reverence for the characters. So yeah, I would say for entering the Godzilla fandom, try to pick something that would interest you, and then if you want to dive into more, just keep going. The best place to probably start would be any of the solo Godzilla movies, probably anything that is just him. I think that's an easy entering uh, um, entry point into the
Mm-hmm.
franchise. So yeah, that would be my advice for future Godzilla fans. And then for advice for filmmakers, it really is cliche to say, and I say it every time, but it really is true, especially like I've heard other filmmakers say this, and you know, sometimes uh, advice kind of feels like disingenuous sometimes, where you're kind of like, oh, like you've made it, you kind of, you're just saying a blanket statement, and this feels like a blanket statement, but it's true. Just pick up a camera and film something. I
Mm-hmm.
really, that is the greatest piece of advice I keep hearing, and it constantly is true. Where if you don't pick up a camera, you're never going to make it because you're not actively making the movie that you
Right.
want to.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if it ends up being the worst thing imaginable. You did it. Like you completed the movie, you finished it, and you can always learn from your mistakes. And I would say I would actually encourage people to make mistakes because I've been making films, short films, for like 15 years now, and I've made a plethora of mistakes. And I think all those things have informed me on what to do, what not to do, but you won't know those mistakes until you end up gathering your friends, shooting something with the script, with a crew. So it sounds silly and kind of easy to just say go shoot something, but it really is the hardest thing in the world to actually complete a film. It's
Yeah.
so difficult, and I think really the best piece of advice to say is really just to go out and shoot anything. Like it could be 2 minutes, it can be 30 minutes, it can be a feature, anything, just whatever you want. You need to put in the energy and the dedication and the passion to organize a film shoot, get your friends together, get a camera, get some equipment. It can be the worst equipment, like it can be your phone, honestly. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've been using my phone for a lot of films recently, like experimenting. So
Mm-hmm.
you have a camera in your pocket now, so it feels like you should definitely take the advantage of that kind of technological advancement where you have access to basic filmmaking equipment. So you should just go out and make something. That is, from my
That
experience, it really has helped. Just
That's really good advice, though,
thank you.
honestly. 'Cause I also give this advice to writers too. I mean, actually create the work. Like, the
Mm,
other big steps would be putting it out there and then networking. Like, I'm always telling people, like, I even if you're an introvert, I'm a very much an introvert, like, there's a certain point where you do have to do some, like, networking,
yeah.
because I feel like kind of like what I was saying, earlier, like, we can uplift each other in what we do, right? And
Mhm.
I think that's the importance of that networking. So,
Yeah, 100%.
oh, this has been such a great conversation, Yoko. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for
No,
thank you
it's
for
been
joining me.
no, no, thank you for having me.
Well, you're always welcome. There's always a seat open for you. Now, plug your stuff. Where can people find your things?
Yes, you can find me at the Yoko Higuchi on Instagram and Twitter. I think Instagram has dots between my the words, but it's the Yoko Higuchi on Instagram, Twitter, and you can find my work on YouTube. It's under Resistance Pictures. I'm sure you can if you type in Resistance Pictures Yoko Higuchi, you can definitely find some of the stuff. We're working on a bunch of different things now. We're trying to get into some festivals and trying to do some more big projects coming up. And yeah, I'll also be just to plug another thing. I'll also be a panelist at Kaiju Brooklyn. That's coming up
Yes.
in June. My good friend John Robo7 is running that, so I will be a panelist discussing Shin Godzilla and my experiences on that. So yeah, check me out on YouTube and come say hi.
That is so exciting. I am excited to see all the projects that you do in the future. And everyone, all of these links will be in the description section of this video, so please go check those out. And per the usual, don't forget to click like for the algorithm. Don't forget to subscribe. And most importantly, don't forget to keep standing tall, my friends. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.